are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as always, Kevin Durso. Kevin, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Obviously, if you follow hockey in the slightest, we're going to be starting on a little bit of a heavy note today. Before we dive into that real quick here, follow us on our social medias. We're at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. We're, during the season, we're here every week for your Flyers needs. In the off season, we're a little less, but we're getting back to that regular season pretty soon here. So check us out, subscribe, follow along. It's going to be a really fun season. So, okay, transitioning into the actual kind of the show itself here. There's only really one topic. It's Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. If you're listening to the show, you're enough of a hockey fan to know who they are. You're enough of a Flyers fan to know what the Gaudreau family meant to the South Jersey, Delaware Valley area. This has been a really tough one, Kevin. Death is obviously a natural part of life. That is part of the cycle. That is how it all goes. And we hear about celebrity deaths all the time, and even unfortunately, we do hear about the occasional athlete death. But this one's different. We all know why, right? It's the local roots. It's the hometown touch. There's layers upon layers upon layers upon layers to this story, and we are going to dive into it here. But just off the top here, Kevin, where were you kind of when this all started? When how did you experience this news?
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, for anybody who's watching on our YouTube channel, you see my shirt today.
Yeah.
I will say right off the bat, I know the shirt has a number on it that is representative of one portion of this. I don't want to take anything away from Matthew in this because that's equally a huge loss for the community and that they are a part of the hockey community in general. There's a lot of tributes to Johnny around, kind of like this shirt I'm wearing has a 13 on it. I have a picture of Johnny over here now that I've put up in the office as kind of a tribute going forward because to just give context for people, and people who are watching can kind of see the picture. I'm pointing at it right now, but he's in color and everything around him is in black and white, and he's celebrating a goal. He's got a big smile on his face, and I think it's just so representative of him. Like, it just seems like a guy who just loved the game and loved what the game meant to him, that kind of relationship that he had with it. So yeah, I mean, I was completely shocked and saddened by it. It definitely puts a whole lot into perspective when you hear news of death in general, like you said. But when you start, the first thing that jumps out to me usually with these types of things is 31-29. The ages hit you right away. That's perspective. First of all, and I'll get kind of into more of this a little bit later, but I didn't find out until I woke up on Friday morning after it had happened. So I needed a few seconds to begin with to process what I even woke up to. Once I did, and I hadn't really still fully processed it, but once I had a grasp on it, even in the slightest, I wrote a story because by the time, it was worth writing a story. Normally, I don't think I would be writing on something like this. I don't usually write about players on other teams or anything like that too often. But this was a South Jersey-born player who became an NHL star. His brother was very well known. Right. Well, and his brother was well known in the community too, like I said. So Matthew was well known. And I'm covering hockey in general for 97.3 ESPN in South Jersey. And same with Sports Talk Philly. I mean, it's both. Like, it covers a certain area. It's that area,
Delaware Valley.
There are going to be readers who are from his hometown, who knew him directly. No mention of it at all is criminal. So I do what I have to do with that. And once I posted the story, there were a few thoughts I had from the rest of the day that just kind of kept coming back, and they've been coming back for 2 weeks at this point.
Yeah. And by the way, I do want to mention, just kind of before we're kind of diving into this, I understand that death is a very uncomfortable subject. If this makes you sad, if you don't want to listen to this, it's really, really sad. And we're not going to beat around the bush on some of that stuff. If you'd like to skip this portion of the section, of the show, please feel free to jump ahead a little bit. We will talk some Flyers. We have some rookie camp stuff, but this is too important, right? This is more than the game of hockey.
Well, because like you said, it's people who know people from his area, just people from his area who are reading my stuff, people who knew him. We both can say that to an extent, right? Like,
sure.
Like I'm gonna get into my connection with him in a few moments, because like I definitely go there. I went there pretty quickly in the thought process. Did you want to, before we dive into that part of it, did you want to just rehash any bits of the story, like you'd said at the top, just to so we're off of that?
In case you somehow haven't heard what happened, I'm just going to blow through it real quick. I'm not going to dwell on details.
Most people have, but yeah, just a quick synopsis.
Essentially, Johnny Gaudreau and his brother, along with their families, wives, kids, etc., were all kind of gathered in town for their sister's wedding. The evening before the wedding, I'm not sure if they had done the rehearsal dinner that night or the day before, whatever the situation. Yep. Okay. Johnny and Matthew, or John and Maddie, as their friends and family knew them. I will not refer to them for the duration of the show as that, because I did not know them like that. But Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau decided to go out for a bike ride. Long story short, drunk driver attempting to pass another car struck and killed both of them. They were pronounced dead on the scene. That's kind of the truth of it, the nature of it. It is supremely unfortunate. There is never an excuse to drink and drive. That's the end of it, man. There's no more to it than that.
Yeah, that's the end of it. Exactly.
There was, not even going to say may, there was a little bit of irresponsible journalism.
I have that for later too. So
I was going to say that we'll touch on a little bit later. I heard a bit of a rumor before I went to bed based off of that irresponsible journalism. Shortly after I woke up in the morning, I saw the confirmation news.
Right.
And at that point, obviously, you believe it, because
sure. There's a statement.
Yeah, man. When the Calgary Flames make a statement, when the Columbus Blue Jackets make a statement, when the agent makes a statement, that's it.
Sure. So first and foremost, I thought about the Gaudreau family and all of the details around the story that make it harder to digest and harder to process. You can take the hockey element out of this story, because it's sad enough when you even without that part of it, that they were well known for that purpose and all that stuff like that. Like, take that out of it. If someone had just come up to you and said, here's a family that lost 2 sons and brothers, both were husbands. Johnny and his wife Meredith have 2 kids, one who was just born a few months ago. And this is and here's an addition to my notes, because at the funeral service on Monday, Meredith revealed that she and John were expecting their 3rd child. Yep. Matt and his wife
9 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, and Matt and his wife are expecting a baby. That's already enough to break your heart as it is. And then you add the part where their sister Katie was getting married on the Friday that the news comes out and is made official. This was after the rehearsal dinner. So that's even more heartbreaking, that you're there for, you're there for this happy occasion. It's supposed to be their sister's best day of her life. And now it's the worst day immediately. And so right away, I think of them, and I know there is no way that I can remotely comprehend what they are going through. There's no way for me to comprehend the strength that both Meredith and Madeline, Johnny and Matt's widows, had to deliver such moving and inspired eulogies at that funeral. Yeah. I watched the whole thing, and I was glued. That was more than anything. When they were the ones who got up to speak, I wanted to hear what they were going to say, and
incredibly strong women.
Absolutely. Then I started to shift from, like, obviously thinking of the film, and that, oh, by the way, this extends beyond like some of the names I mentioned, because like, if you knew about these 2 brothers, you knew about their father. You knew about Guy Gaudreau. I've heard about Coach Guy so many times talking to people who have any connection to that area.
Listen, as someone who grew up in Washington Township, the home of Hollydale Ice Arena, you know the name Guy Gaudreau.
An absolute legend of the area, absolutely. And so you think about his parents, you think like everything like that. It's just there's another sister in the family too, so it's just heartbreaking. The whole thing is heartbreaking for them, and like I said, there's no way to comprehend what they are going through. Then I started to think about the hockey community and the friends within that the Gaudreau brothers have. One of the first people I thought of was Hunter Brody, because Broads and I did a podcast in 2021 where we would have Johnny on once a week, and he was so easy to talk to, always a nice guy, and this was just from a few brief conversations. I never personally met him. I never got to talk to him much more beyond that type of stuff, but you could tell what kind of character he had, even from just 10, 15 minutes of chatting really quick, on a few occasions. You just knew. Broads had grown up playing with the Gaudreaus. He was friends with them. It turned out, and I have more on like some of the other people that kind of in the community that are, but I was crushed for Broads because he was closer to Matt than he was to John. And I think that's just partially by proximity, that John went off and became an NHL star. He's playing in Calgary. He's playing in Columbus.
I went to Boston College for 4 years, right?
He'd come home regularly. Like if you heard anything from the funeral services, they were frequenters of the shore, things like that. Like they would come back and do the shore over the summers because that's where they wanted to be. It was where the family was, right? But
sure,
I think that was
Jersey Shore in the summer.
Sure, but I think that's where like that closeness with Matt came from, because Matt was more local throughout the course of this, and
sure.
His career was more of a minor league career from a hockey playing standpoint. He was starting to coach at locally,
working his way up
after
through
he was done.
Gloucester Catholic. Yeah.
But I was crushed for Broads. I thought about guys who had played with either of the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first that came to my mind was Kevin Hayes, just because he already had to go through tragedy with the loss of his brother. Now, he obviously. Go ahead.
Sorry, I would be remiss if I didn't give a lighthearted mention to the Johnny Gaudreau tampering committee. It's a joke I made on this show for 2 full years essentially, and it's Kevin Hayes, it's Patrick Brown, it's all the Boston College guys that happened to come through here in the lead up to Johnny Gaudreau's free agency, right? Like that was kind of the prelude to it all, and. So yeah, my first thought was also immediately Kevin Hayes, because not only is this one of his best friends on planet Earth, but
exactly,
like you mentioned, his brother, 2 years ago? Come on,
something like
man.
that, yeah. I
wasn't the biggest fan of the guy in a Flyers jersey, but I feel for that person,
because
it's
exactly that. He had it's the closeness of relationship he had with John to begin with, and then on top of it, to sit there and go, how much more can this poor guy take on a human level? Man. How much more can you take? So I thought of him. I thought of Cam Atkinson. I thought of any player who is on the Columbus Blue Jackets that was also part of the team in 21-22 when Matisse Kivlenieks was killed over the summer. And had
the layers to this story are awful.
And so the immediate guys that came to my mind anyway were Elvis Merzlikins or Boone Jenner or Zach Werenski. Like those guys already had to go through this once before with a fallen teammate, and now you have to again. I thought about Sean Monahan, who had just signed in Columbus recently and was about to play with Johnny again. And
he was so excited.
Day before this all happened and came out, or I think it was the day that the actual tragedy happened. And the news came out the next day. He was on a podcast that was released and expressed that very excitement. And
Sean Monahan was looking forward to reviving his career with Johnny Gaudreau.
I thought of people connected to the organization, the Columbus organization, like John Davidson, or even people who are not with the organization now that had something to do with Johnny being there in the first place. So like Jarmo Kekalainen, like the general manager who was GM of the team, obviously, when the Kivlenieks accident happened and tragedy happened, and now brought Johnny there. He was still GM when Johnny signed, and now that happens. And when I watched the funeral services, I was it was streamed, so I was at home. I wasn't gonna believe me. I didn't have that kind of closeness to show up and do something with it. So but I saw a lot of those faces. Hayes and Monahan were pallbearers for John. I read somewhere that Andrew Mangiapane was as well.
Okay.
Broads was a pallbearer for Matt. So was another close friend of theirs, Eric Robinson, who played in Columbus for a time.
Yep.
I believe the last place he was Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. But he's
That
an
sounds about right.
active NHL player. So there was already a lot on my mind just thinking about all that stuff. And like you saw just like in that little span that I just gave, it's all over the place. It's, oh, I picked up on this from the funeral. Like I saw this face that I recognized, and it makes you feel horrible for what that person's feeling in this moment about the friend that they just lost, or, you know, anything like that. And so it goes all over the place. Like this is from the start of this to now. And there was already a lot in my mind just thinking of that. I'm really glad, and this is what you had alluded to earlier, I'm really glad I didn't watch this unfold in real time. I actually happened to be up pretty late the night before, like after midnight. And I actually was sitting online like I do sometimes, and I saw that Johnny Gaudreau's name was trending on Twitter. And I didn't bother to click on it because I figured it's probably just some pointless argument about where he's playing or why he isn't on this team or blah,
when he's
blah,
getting traded to the Flyers or right.
Like 90% of the stuff is on Twitter, right?
Especially in late August.
And the thing is that sometimes you see a name pop up on trending and you click because you're going, what happened? And that's what you get. I don't know why I didn't bother to do that and to have that, to be able to even see what was out there. But I'm glad I didn't.
I would say be glad you didn't.
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't, because I didn't find out about it while it was still in the reported and rumored stages. I just woke up to, here's the statement, here's the announcement. I opened Twitter, and in this order, or roughly in this order, I saw, here's Columbus's statement, here's Gary Bettman's statement, here's Mike Greenberg on ESPN's Get Up announcing it, and here's the clip.
Man, that's heartbreaking. That was heartbreaking.
It is, but like, you see where I'm going with this. It was all already official, because the way that it played out was handled very poorly.
Very unofficial.
It was very poor. It was just handled very poorly. It really drives home, like, it. Ironic that this was a topic on our last show, so I'm going to drive home the point, because it really this in itself drives home the point. It really drives home the point that I made on the last show about not living your life on social media.
Oh man, you're not wrong.
Like, one, living on social media and feeling obligated to comment on everything or give your thoughts on everything or whatever, it can also get you in trouble.
Yeah.
And two people lost their lives that night, and we're supposed to be enjoying the finer moments in life. Like, there's going to be, like, there's an element, and I don't, again, like I said, I can't comprehend what this family is going through that has been torn apart in a way that is just inconceivable. But there is an element for this family that is taking comfort in the fact that it was two brothers who are closer than ever, out together, riding their bikes, bonding, and it was the night before that. Like, even though the night before their sister's wedding is heartbreaking,
celebrating a joyous occasion.
They are there for the family, as they always seemed to be, and there's some sort of comfort for the family if you can find any in the situation, and you're trying to. Certainly, that's how grieving works. Is that they were together. Like, everybody is sitting there and coming to the same conclusion that it couldn't have been just one of them. Like, it feels like they were destined to go together. That's how connected they were. They were connected at the hip everywhere they went. That was the way that it was. And if you want to honor these two in any way, I think it would be to live life with the sense of family and community that they both had. You may think that you have community with the people you interact with online, and to a degree you do. Like, we're all sports fans, and in our circles, it's more Philly sports than anything, and that bonds us together. But there is nothing like the circle of people that you have in your corner for everything else, for what the computer and the internet and the social media platforms don't get to see. That is stronger than anything. And that, to me, is what's more important here. And so the way that it played out, I'm not going into full details on the way it played out.
Well, real quick, I did just want to mention there was some irresponsible journalism. I know I mentioned that a little bit earlier in the show. There was apparently, and thankfully I did not see this information. Apparently there was also a leaked report that had come out, and
This is the thing about the notepad.
Yeah, there's all sorts of leaky, dirty information there. But if we're talking about social media,
Yeah.
the biggest issue with what happened, and thankfully the journalist who did this seems to have lost their access to a platform, and I am grateful for that. It seems this is why we verify stories. This is why we double check things. This is why, and here's the most important part, we allow the police to notify victims' families before we tweet things.
Well, that was the biggest problem. This isn't about access to information. This is
sure
because I've heard it said already before.
No one's upset when Frank Saravalli knows something first, but we know he did it the right way.
Well, yeah, you know how you know people did it the right way? Because did you see a single national hockey reporter have anything out? This is a local story. Did you see a single local reporter have anything out? Realistically.
Oh, and I'm sure people got text messages. I'm sure they did. But they were too responsible because they know how this works. They know that the correct move in this situation is to not have the first tweet. It's to allow the family to be notified personally.
Right. So, you know, and
that's all I wanted to say on
that. And I don't have too much more on this either. It's like that was a lot of my thoughts. You know, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to harp on that thing. This is more about the memory of these two people,
of course,
and people more than I'm saying people more than players. It's really fun. Like, it's funny because you sat there and you said a couple minutes ago about how you're not gonna, like you said, everybody, like, you're seeing all these posts, all this stuff, and it's John and Maddie, right? And you can't go there because
that's not my name for them.
Well, because and not only that, but it's like thousands of other hockey fans out there. This is Johnny Hockey, right?
Correct.
I had maybe a couple of conversations with the guy and heard, you know, from talking through Broads and things like that. You came to know pretty quickly that away from the rink, it was John. And
sure.
And I started doing the same thing. It's like, you know, because that's the way that it was. Like that's. And it became natural, like, as much as, like, you're sitting there and believe me, it was funny because the whole free agency thing for him came way after that. You know, like, after we had done the show and things like that. So in the back of my mind, I'm going, every time I go on the air and talk, it's still Johnny Gaudreau. That's,
you got to call him Johnny, right?
Well, because that's what's going to show up in the box score. That's how you're going to see, you know, that's what the graphic on TV says when he scores a goal. But when it came down to just having general conversations, it was, well, this is, you know, John with this and John's doing that or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it was that. And like, you knew, like, I had heard, you know, through Broads, I had heard things about both of, you know, I think about both of their weddings. I had heard things about both of their, you know, about the way their families were and things like that. We had even done it. I remember even doing a spot where briefly, you know, John's wife came up as part of the conversation because it was something about cooking or something like that. And you could just tell by him saying her name that he was beaming. Like, we were doing this over the phone, so I don't see him, but you could just tell he's beaming. Like,
well, and that's the thing about Johnny Gaudreau is I didn't know him, right? I was even a step further removed than you were. You know, I never met him. I was 1 degree separated, right? We had Mike, former podcast host Mike, who, you know, played against him growing up. And, you know, I have all these connections just from being in South Jersey and being vaguely around the hockey scene. Like, I know all these people who know him, but I never got a chance to meet him. But it didn't matter because I feel like I knew him. And I feel like I knew him in a very healthy way.
Sure.
He is a hockey player who has a personal, private family life. And I did want to say 2 quick things. One, he had the personality, and there are some guys around the league who have reputations for being good guys, for smiling all the time, for loving the game of hockey, for for those people who hockey is not work, right? Who it is their love, their passion, their joy. And you could tell while he's at the rink playing the game he loves, Johnny loved it. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is how much of an inspiration he was for every person built like him.
Absolutely.
Right? If Johnny Gaudreau doesn't come along, is Alex DeBrincat a 40 goal scorer? Is Cole Caulfield a top 10 draft pick? Go down the list, right? You even had Cole Caulfield change his jersey number to 13
Exactly.
in honor of Johnny Gaudreau. It was past the whatever the deadline is for players to change numbers. An exception was made. He will wear 13.
Yep.
Going forward, he said he had worn it growing up in honor, in honor of Johnny Gaudreau, and now he will do so in remembrance of Johnny Gaudreau.
Now you watch, he's scoring at least 40 this year.
Oh man, I hope he scores 13 goals a game.
By the way, here's another footnote for you to kind of categorize what kind of player in person Johnny was on the ice.
He's changed the game.
Well, here's to categorize one for you too, because you said something about the personality and always a smile and all stuff like that. Let's not forget the guy won the Lady Byng Trophy.
Sure.
Which is exactly, which everybody knows what it's for. It's about it's good sportsmanship.
And more importantly,
gentlemanly conduct. Do you need any more of a,
more importantly than that, Jake Voracek grabbed him at that All-Star Skills Comp.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to bring that up.
I love that clip so much because it's perfect for Jake.
Yeah,
it's perfect for Johnny. It's an awesome clip. I've watched it like 8 times in the last week.
There's a still shot of it too, where the smiles on both of their faces
beaming.
It's perfect.
I know exactly the one. Yeah. It's so good.
It's perfect. And you think about stuff like that too. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, and that's like, because of the local tie, like this is one of the other things that made me think of is that there's certain elements of stories like this where you kind of feel like you remember where you were when you found out about it. Like there's not a ton of athlete deaths that I can think of where that kind of comes up like this. Like the first one that comes to mind immediately in this area is a lot of people will be able to tell you where they were when they found out about Pelle Lindbergh. A lot of people will be able to, for me, one of the ones most recently that I can remember is I still remember the feeling I had when I found out about Roy Halladay and that connection to Philadelphia.
Yep.
That's a
good one.
Yeah. So but there's things like that where it hits you a certain way because of a connection of some kind, whether it was playing for your team and it just hits you with that sinking feeling, or in this case, he never played for the Flyers. He never played for the team that most people that I'm connected to root for.
Yeah, but if you had told me he played 6 more NHL years, I would have bet he would have.
Well, and regardless of whether or not that would have happened, it didn't matter whether he played for them or not. He represented an entire area just by being in the league in general, by changing the game.
He put South Jersey hockey on the map.
Exactly.
That's it. I don't know if there have been any other products of South Jersey since Johnny.
I mean, there's a handful to go off of right away. I mean, Tony Diaz had a career for a little, and he's out of that. I know. But there's Bobby Ryan.
Okay.
Bobby Ryan was another big one, but I think
I'd be willing to bet within the next 10 years or so, you'll have the kids that grew up watching Johnny, and I think you'll see a boom.
Well, and I think you're right about the part with his influence on the game in terms of being built the way he was, and being able to say, look, you're right. Look at your Cole Caulfields. Look at your Alex DeBrincats, guys like that.
He made that a viable roster spot again.
I mean, and like, he was hardly the first. You got a perfect example in Philadelphia to speak of. Danny Briere did it too, and put that size thing on there. But to have it now done with such regularity, like, I think.
And how many guys come out of college like that?
Sure. How many guys who are built like him are the best college player in the country? Win the Hobie Baker Award. Like, it doesn't happen like that, and it did for him because he was that good of a player. And No, like, no. Was he in the stratosphere of the McDavids and the Matthews? No, but he had his moments. Like, I think to me, like one of the like one of the lasting images I'll remember in terms of one of the goals he scored was that Game 7 goal against Dallas. That
Oh
is one of
man,
like the crowning playoff moments that he'll have in his career.
that
Is
goal is
that moment?
so good. That goal is
And I mean when
so
and
good.
I mean when you go look back at his stats too over the years, he was nearly a point per game player.
Oh yeah, and in an era where there were not a ton of point per game players.
Certainly not when he came up. It
Exactly.
was it was growing when he was like in the most recent years, obviously, but yeah, certainly not when he came up was it like that. It was a lot tougher at that time. Like, yeah, and
Yep.
but like,
Unfortunately, it is always difficult to kind of
yeah,
transition out of topics
yeah,
like
you're
these.
like
I just
sitting here
want to make
going,
sure
how do we move on?
was there anything else that you wanted to address? I just want to make sure. Obviously, we do want to send our condolences, our well wishes, our thoughts, prayers, feelings, concern, care, all
Mhm.
of the emotions to the Gaudreau family, to the NHL extended family, to the South Jersey hockey extended
Yeah,
family, to the Hollydale Arena, everybody,
yep,
everybody, everybody, everybody. Like you said, Johnny and his wife had 2 kids, and Meredith announced yesterday that she was pregnant with their third. Matthew and his wife were expecting their first. It's a heartbreaking situation for all those involved, of course, but uh,
I I think the one
we
thing that
do wish them the best.
of course, and I
Yeah,
echo that 1,000%. I kind of shared stuff sporadically throughout this thing. Again, I think the one thing that I want to echo here, because we just spent a lot of time on Johnny stories for a second here, because
of
like
course.
his career played out maybe more in the public eye than Matthews did. Like I said, kind of at the top, I want to make sure like we need to make sure that Matthew gets
Absolutely.
all the attention here too in this, because that's the bond that they had. Matthew was a really good hockey player in his own right.
And was in the process of getting ready to give back to his hockey community, right? We
Exactly.
talked about
Like,
coaching. He had taken a job with Gloucester Catholic. He's working his way up through the coaching ranks and doing more to strengthen the local hockey scene. And he deserves recognition for that as well.
sure.
Absolutely.
And he had a very successful minor league career that did also
Absolutely.
cross paths with the Flyers organization briefly. He was a Reading Royal
Was the
for
Reading Royal.
for a
Yep.
time. I believe some people said that was the best he'd ever played in the minors was when he was with the Reading Royals. It was one of his best seasons ever.
I
So
bet.
like there you go. And like so I just want to make sure that that part's not overshadowed, because
Absolutely.
a
Yes,
lot
sir.
of people turn to the Johnny side of it because that's he was an NHL star, and there's no
Yep.
denying that. But like the Johnny would sit there and even probably say that those two were equals in that family in terms of the impact that they have. That's how tight knit their family was. They were equals, and
He'd probably tell you Matthew was ahead of him, frankly.
he would. Yeah, I mean that's
But
the way they are. That's the way that family is. It
yeah.
seems like, and And you can tell, like I said, you could tell that by talking to John on occasion. Like that's the type of person John was, to be able to sit there and everything was like that. And I so like I said, I just want them to be recognized as equals. I will throw out, by the way, and you know what? I don't know if it's still open or not. I'd have to go check, but there was a GoFundMe account going around for Madeline
Incredible.
and Trip, their son who's yet to be born, obviously. But that thing took off like gangbusters. It was up to I don't even know if it's how much further.
I saw it over 540,000.
That's where I last saw it, and that's why I said I'm gonna go kind of see if I can't
It
find
might
the
be
link.
down, but
Well, that's why I'm saying I want to
w
see if it's still open, because if it is, it's obviously a very worthy thing uh
and
to
absolutely
give
to
to,
share that
obviously.
out, and yeah. And I trust that the NHL community as a whole is, and I've seen a ton of them donating, but I trust that even beyond that, they
It
are
is
receiving
so,
help, and that is good to say.
so update. It is still open, so we will put the link in the description, and it's up over $770,000.
That is awesome. Okay. Yep. So
There you go.
we are gonna leave it there. Once again, condolences to the Gaudreau family. We do wish them our best. Rest in peace to Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau.
Yep.
Okay. And we do have a little bit of Flyers talk. Like I said, there's really not an easy way to do this, so I do just kind of have to hit a hard left turn.
There's not, and by the way, like, not to keep going on from the previous thing, but this is another thing. This is another thing that made it tough too, is that you are getting to the dawning of the new season.
We're gearing up to the hockey season.
And you're gearing up for that, and that, like, that does bring a level of excitement. Like, you start to get energized. We haven't seen players on the ice yet, obviously, so we're getting closer to that. Hell, for what it's worth, I saw a picture of, I guess it would have been one of the informal skates that some of the vets are doing right now from Voorhees, and like Scott Lawton's pictured, and I saw like a couple other. I'd have to go find the actual thing to show that, but just in general, like, you see that and it's like, okay, we're getting close to that. Yeah, who else is in these pictures? Cam York is in a picture, I see, and then that's Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee's behind him, and that might be Eric Johnson in the background, kind of blurred out a little bit because they're focused on the foreground. But you start to you see more faces and you see more people, and it's like, okay, we're getting closer to that.
Starting to fill up a little bit. Yep.
Well, and that too, when you start to see more people involved, and you go, oh, this person's already here, and this person's here, and this person's here. And like, I think earlier in the offseason when we talked also, it was like, I don't know if Garnet Hathaway left, because it seemed like he was always there anyway to do stuff. So it's like, did he even leave town? Stuff like that.
He definitely bought a place in Woodbury. Like, I don't know for sure, but
no, is that Garnet Hathaway's kind of town?
Yeah.
Family guy,
Yeah. Woodbury's a nice little family town. Yeah, absolutely. Right next to the highway, easy access to the city.
There you go. So I think you see stuff like that and you're starting to build up towards it. We've got a little ways to go. We're going to get another show in before we actually get to the vets and some of like the training camp storylines. I think more like this is going to be rookie camp. And right now, you're waiting to see who else is on the roster. You're waiting to see who else is, other guys participating in this thing.
You mentioned there were some people here all summer. I remember a couple weeks ago, there was a batch of photos that came out. I think it was Cam York, Jamie Drysdale, Tyson Forrester, Joel Farabee. I think somebody else was with them too. So yeah, the guys have definitely been here.
You're talking about all the guys that were. I'm trying to remember. They might have actually watched the development.
They were watching Dev Camp. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. Well, then I'm pretty sure it was almost
Cam York.
Well, no, but I'm pretty sure it was almost the entire group that you just mentioned was also at the Phillies game the night Matvei Michkov threw out the first pitch. Like,
that's really funny.
They
all follow each other on Instagram. Like that's the Matvei group. That's the Matvei friend group.
The Matvei group.
All those guys have Duolingo Russian going on their phone right now.
So that's the guy that's getting roped into the whatever it is, the Mexican vacation that they all took, the trip to Cabo or whatever it is.
Man,
when
you
the
know what?
bye week hits, or when actually it's not the bye week this year, is it? It's going to be 4 nations, isn't it?
You know what that is?
What's that?
That's your core.
You hope so. I mean, there's names in there that we've had
locker room.
I mean, there's names in there that we've had questions about. You're right. I think you hope so. Your York Drysdale pairing and your
it looks Forrester, like that group Michkov. Is a little vibey. If Forrester, Michkov, Farabee ends up being a line,
ooh, that would be interesting. I mean,
like, I don't know if Forster's playing center.
Yeah, someone's got to play.
It would be Forrester in that situation, but that's a you change on the fly to that line. You don't put that line out there on a whistle.
I mean, I will give you this. That's an interesting enough line combination that it leaves you Couturier, Tippett, Konechny. So I hear you there.
That's a really good second line.
For what it's worth, and I've been saying this for a while, and maybe the interchangeable part here is Farabee for me, or is that who we said?
Okay.
Yeah, Farabee was the other part of it, because I think you have to try at some point. You have to try Forster on a line with Michkov for Forster's forechecking ability.
Yes, please.
I think that absolutely has to be tried. I wonder if they swap out an F there, and instead of Farabee, it's Frost centering the line. Like, I'm not saying Farabee would have been the center. I'm just saying.
Of course.
I think I think that's the line I think you may try to go with at the beginning.
I think that's probably what they want the second line to be. Yeah.
but we'll see. I don't know. And see, you just said second line too. I don't know if they even can. Who knows? Maybe Michkov considered something more than that. We'll have to see.
I mean, if Matvei Michkov walks in right away and forces John Tortorella to play him first line minutes, I'm not going to be sad about it.
No, I wouldn't be either. So, and here's the thing,
and I'll tell you one thing. If Matvei Michkov walks in and forces John Tortorella to give him first line minutes, the Philadelphia Flyers win a playoff round this year.
We'll see. We will see.
September
all right.
10th, 8:35 p.m.
Yep. Take your note.
Mark
take your notes. Yep. Take your note. Put it down on the calendar. I got you.
I mean, and listen, that's a big if. I understand.
Well, and that's so we're like this is really a short little like with the banner underneath for this one because yes, rookie camp opens this week. What is rookie camp really going to be all about though?
There you go.
It's your first look at Matvei Michkov. Now, I had seen somewhere that Michkov is only playing in one of the 2 rookie games this weekend.
That makes sense. I don't need some big ugly Islanders rookie trying to make a spot. Oh, is it the Rangers this year?
It's Rangers.
Islanders, whatever. I don't need some big ugly New Yorker trying to make a name for himself.
Well, you don't need what you don't need because this is exactly the type of guy who would have played in this maybe a year or so ago. You don't need the next
Rempy.
Right, you don't need the next Matt Rempe coming out and doing something. Exactly. I'm not saying that
I'm going to make a name for myself and kill this Russian child.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, but this is
correct. You play him in one game. That's how you treat your superstar in this situation,
right? And
I want him to get 2 or 3 preseason games for sure.
Well, by that point, you're ramping up, and you've got it. Like this is like,
and Nick Delorier can play on the other wing just in case.
Fair. See, I was going to say, like,
in the preseason, who cares?
Well, and in the preseason, this isn't the NFL. You got to get these guys into a few games, and you're going to want to see them. So,
especially the kid with no North American ice time.
Sure. All right. So you got that part of this. I don't really want to touch on the Kolosov stuff too much because it's mostly the same. The only thing that we've got now is
1,000 times.
Well, the only thing we've got now is
here. You're not here.
No, but that's the only thing we've got. Is it sounds more and more like that's an official thing that he won't be reporting. Right, that he won't be reporting, but remains to be seen. And so I don't know yet.
I mean, that's it for him. Is all I've seen is that I think he started working out with a team in Minsk, I want to say. I think he showed up to Dynamo Minsk's camp. And that was kind of him essentially saying, well, I'm not going to be at the Flyers camp.
Right. I don't know. Maybe something changes that surprises us. Maybe it doesn't. I have no idea. But
okay.
I'm not like I'm not saying I'm not worried about it. Like I said, there's an element for me with this one though where because I remember I said as soon as we find out he's not coming, then we've got a reason to criticize the Flyers more as an organization. And we still do because it's still twice it would happen, right? There's a key difference though, and PHLY did a whole big segment on this recently within the last day or so. And there's a really good point that was brought up about leverage because the one thing when it happened with Cutter Gauthier is Cutter Gauthier had no contract. He had no reason to be loyal to the Flyers because he had signed a piece of paper that says you are a Flyer. He was, as far as we're concerned,
all he did was sit there and they selected him.
Right. And as far as we know, the only other thing that he was at that time, or at that time, as far as we know, it's the only other thing he was at the time was a member of Boston College.
Yep.
That's as far as it goes. You have the right at that point to sit there and say, I'm not signing. Kolosov signed a contract, and that's the angle, and that's the angle the Flyers are coming from, which is, hey, listen, if you don't want to play, we're not just going to sit here and say, yeah, we'll loan the contract back to your KHL team or another KHL team. We're not going to do that.
And more importantly, we're not going to allow you to dictate what happens with your contract. You signed a contract.
Well, it's
honor
not
your contract.
Well, no, it's a little different because in this case, he could pursue, and this is the point PHLY made, he could pursue, Dynamo doesn't have, maybe they've already signed a bunch of goalies, they were gearing up for the season without him. It was fairly recent. They just signed another guy. I think they had just signed another guy who was 29 or something like that. And so it sounds like they're preparing to not, or at least they were preparing to not have him either.
Well,
So
sure.
Kolosov could go out there and look for another KHL team and say, I'm going to sign, or I want to sign with this other team. And it becomes kind of another Fedotov situation again, where
With the
now
IAHF rules.
With those rules, but now it gets involved where now there's going to be this back and forth again about who's right, who's wrong, whatever. And they could sit there.
If you remember in that situation, the IIHF said Flyers contract, and the KHL went, no.
But see this. Okay, but that was the point. Was that's the battle you're going to go through, where it would be somebody in the KHL is going to have to stand up for you and say, no, you're playing here, and we said so.
Yeah, it turns out the KHL will do that.
And well, they will. But someone brought up during their show, like on PHLY, someone brought up on their show, a commenter must have brought up something about Fedotov had been in the Olympics for Russia and had, like all this type of stuff, like had done a bunch of stuff with them on a national level, that he and was an elite KHL goaltender that was like, yeah, we want him. Like his KHL team had gone to their version of the championship and come up just short, I think, with him playing extremely well. So they were going to battle like, no, we want him here.
Is that still the Gagarin Cup?
It might be. Yeah, I didn't go that far with it or whatever.
I think it's the Gagarin Cup, but anyway.
But either way, like Kolosov does not have that level of experience even to maybe warrant that response. So a KHL team has to back him up to say you're playing here. And short of him requesting a trade and having his rights move, which then would really put a lot on the organization for, well, you got a kid to say, like, that's the one thing that I feel like we don't know yet about this story is there's nothing out there about he won't play for the Flyers. As far as we know, he doesn't want to come over.
It's a homestead thing is kind of the idea.
He just wants to be back, like either in the KHL or somewhere in that general area, right? This is not as much about
I think the implication is that it's because he's not going to make the Flyers roster.
Well, sure, but like there's a bunch,
and that he probably, and it turns out Minsk might be better than Allentown. Is what he's going with.
Well, I hear that, but like what I'm saying is that if it was just down to I don't want to be in the minors, every team could tell you belong in the minors for another year. This is what's best for your development. All 31 other teams that he could play for could have the same message because they already have 31.
Well, right, and the Flyers also just went out and brought Fedotov over and gave him a 2-year extension with 4 games of experience. And I could understand Kolosov going, whoa, I was in a hotel room in Allentown all by myself all year. What do you mean?
Right, but all I'm trying to say is that so far this hasn't been a like, no, I want to sign somewhere else kind of thing, or I wish I was playing somewhere else. Like if the Flyers took the step to terminate the contract and said we're just getting rid of it, it's never going to happen, end of story, and then he pops up with another NHL team, that's a huge loss because then it says it's all about you. It had to do with the organization in some way. Not so much.
This isn't Flyer specific, is what you're saying.
Well, it doesn't feel like it because by all accounts, everything sounds like the last report that was out there, and Anthony DeMarcos had a lot of this, but a lot of the reports out there are they're going to toll the contract, which is what they did with Fedotov when it was, okay, I guess if we aren't going to have this player, if he's not going to fulfill the year of the contract the way that we anticipated, we don't want to have the year of the contract come off the books then. So we'll toll it down the road, and if he changes his mind, the only NHL team he's playing for is us, because he signed a contract.
Right.
And that's the way that would go. So that's, I think, what the Flyers are holding to is that, listen, you can either come to the end, if you want to come to North America, your choice is possibly be in the minors in Allentown, or we'll see if you're good enough to be in the NHL. And right now,
earn a starting job.
Right. But
earn an NHL job at least.
Right. Or go down and be your best self and be the starter at the minor league level. But one way or another,
go win 35 games with the fans.
But like it's not coincidence to me that a team in the KHL who he would have played for has prepared themselves for life without him, and the Phantoms have prepared for without him too, because they've got a bunch of goalies on PTOs basically, or signing contracts, to be prepared for that. So basically, there's kind of this like stalemate going on where it's like, if you want to play, Ball's in your court. And it kind of falls on the kid if he decides, I don't want to play and I'm just going to try to practice the whole year and not get any gameplay in a crucial year of development for a goalie. That falls on him more than like there's an NHL team saying, you've got a place to play somewhere. It may not be Philly. It might be Allentown.
Well, and like I mentioned last time we talked about this, I can't remember if it was last show or 2 shows ago, but at a certain point, if you don't want to be here, and that means, and you're okay with that, and that means that you're not going to be an NHL goalie, all right, man, have fun in Belarus.
Right.
Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right, and
like, I wish you the best, I guess, but like, thanks.
I think it's more of a non-story if that's the way it plays out, where it's he just never plays in North America. Then it's he just never plays in North America. If he pops up somewhere else,
it feels like everything we've seen from him has been homesick, and every NHL market is not Belarus.
Right.
So now, you're gonna have to get over this homesick thing at some point.
But it could also have to do with, like, bring Michkov into this. Look at the red carpet that the Flyers rolled out for Michkov. They show up at the airport. They pick up. Very funny. But you know what I mean.
We got Fedotov here. We got, man, the Flyers are going to be so communist. Ed Snyder would hate it.
But what I'm getting at is that, like, the president of hockey operations and the general manager went to the airport to pick him up. The general manager is carrying his sticks. Once he's been here for a little bit, his whole family makes it over. His mother's here. His brother is here. And you can understand being in Kolosov's shoes and sitting there going, well, what gives? How come I got the hotel room treatment? You know, where's my
even Fedotov, like I said, you bring him over, sign him right away. He's got a place to stay all summer. He goes right into the NHL. Like, I know he's a little bit older and a more accomplished goalie, but you still look at it and go, well, he came from a similar area. What's going on here?
Right. And for what it's worth, like Danny Briere in one previous media availability somewhere over the summer had brought up, they offered to get his girlfriend over here at Kolosov's. So, like, he had somebody, but or at least they were going to look into it or something like that. But like,
I too, right.
Well, I think when they say they offered, it was not in the initial. There was such little time left in the season when it happened. I don't think they were going to those extremes. And then it was, well, listen, if you'll come back, like, what do you want? Do you want family here? Like, what do you want? We'll figure out a way to make it work. And he's just holding out, basically, as far as we know, anyway. Like,
and Danny Briere ain't going to tell us, so.
No, but it's going to be like, it'll be a question when the time comes, you know, like when camp opens, you'll hear from Danny Briere at some point and it'll come up, but.
Oh, he'll get asked about it right away.
Yeah. But for now, it still is kind of what it is. It sounds like, you know, without having, like, we don't have a rookie camp roster yet. And I fully believe this is the reason. Like,
they don't disagree with you. They're trying to wait to see if
he's either going to be on it because they know he's coming over, or he's not going to be on it, and we're going to have our answer either way. But I think they're trying. I don't think they're releasing anything until we have an answer.
Speaking of a rookie camp roster, even though we don't have one yet, we kind of know who to expect.
Sure.
Who do you have your eyes on through this first little rookie camp?
Most of the players,
the obvious, you know, Matvei Michkov, and you
know. Most are obvious still, like beyond the Michkov thing, because like I want to see another year of Oliver Bonk, another year of Denver Barkey. It's gonna be the first rookie camp for Jet Lashenko. Want to see what he has. You know, honestly, for Lashenko, this will be a really interesting thing for Lashenko, and it doesn't happen over rookie camp as much. But Bonk and Barkey had such a good rookie camp that they went and had such a good first couple of days of main camp that they got into a preseason game last year just for the experience, just to see an NHL surface with other NHL players on the other side of that lineup. It was a lopsided game. So, like, happens, but they got the experience. And then they went on and had, like, just brilliant seasons with the London Knights. So you have that too, right? I want to see if Lashenko is good enough this early on to at least draw the eye of the Flyers when main camp starts to say, we're putting him in a lineup for main camp for a preseason game. Can he get a preseason game? I think that would be awesome. Another one of the names I am. That's a good one. I had another defenseman in mind because of the sheer number of times his name has come up unprompted. Hunter McDonald's a guy I'm going to watch because it just feels like they are really high on him. And
I agree.
I want to see kind of for myself that level of it, but also there's going to be something interesting about these rookie games for him too, more than anybody else that I've mentioned so far. And even you by mentioning Gil. Hunter McDonald got games in with the Phantoms last year. So he's going to know that ice surface. He's going to know that building a little bit. He's going to have like something to expect. I wonder if that makes him gives him an upper hand a little bit. Like some of these other guys who come in and play a rookie series or however you want to look at it after having been in the minors at some point. Maybe only for a partial season, but it's something. It's a little something more than what these other guys have. You know, when you're sitting there, perfect way to reference it. You say Spencer Gill. Well, Spencer Gill's coming in with nothing more than, well, you played junior. So
yeah, but I want to lock him in a room. I want to lock him in a room with Sam Moran for 5 days and just knowledge dump. Go.
Oh, Sam Moran's going to be part of this. Don't you worry. I mean, development coach Sam Moran is going to be all over this, and
I love it so much. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know how much I love Sam Moran.
So that is. So Spencer Gill's a good one. You know what? Then I'm gonna add an element into that then too, and I'll stick to some of this year's picks more more than last year's. But Jack Berglund's another one who I kind of want to get a look at because I've heard his name a lot over the summer with some of the things he's done internationally. I'd like to see.
You know the really important question.
What's that?
Is this the year Jay O'Brien shows up?
Well, no, obviously.
No, I'm joking. I know.
Thank God that's over. I don't need to hear about that anymore.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. Any other notes from rookie camp here?
No, not really.
Okay. Then you know what? It's been a while since we had a show in the 1 hour range, but I think I'm going to go ahead and send us to a wrap here. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we get out of here?
Nope. We'll get to fairly soon. I would imagine we're going to get fairly soon. We're going to get a schedule for when everything is with rookie camp and then
rookie camp and then regular training camp.
Right. Regular training. Well, regular training camp will probably be that's going to be the discussion point of our next show because I would imagine if we don't by then, it's pretty close.
And on a programming note here, we will be back in about a week here. We're still a little bit irregular here, just wrapping up the off season. We'll be getting back to our normal Sunday morning time slot pretty soon here with a Sunday afternoon or Monday morning release. We'll be doing that pretty shortly within the next couple shows here. But other than that, we're going to go ahead and call it a wrap here. So
yep.
In the meantime, follow us on social media at YWT Podcast. Like I said, we will be back in about a week with a new episode, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube to get notified when that happens. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Follow us everywhere you find your podcasts, including sportstalkphilly.com. Yeah, I think that's it, man. Like I said, I don't know what to do with myself. We're out of here in less than an hour, but all right. We'll be back next week. We're only a couple of weeks away from the season. And
you know what gets to happen this weekend? There's streamable hockey games on this weekend.
With Matvei Michkov in at least one of them. All right. So until then, we'll see you.